Welcome to the Intentional Health for Women podcast. I'm your host, Garrett GQ Query. This podcast is dedicated to developing intentional health for women. Former 400-pound fat man turned health and fitness professional, specializing in women's health. In this podcast, you will find over a decade of experience in the health and fitness industry, serving women to become their most intentional self through strength training, nutrition, and lifestyle practices. Each week, we will dive into a variety of different topics, ranging from interviews with women leading the way in the health and fitness industry, client case studies throughout the years, myth busting, social media trends, female hormones, gut health, and so much more. We are not normal. We are intentional. Welcome to another episode of the Intentional Health for Women podcast. I'm your host, Garrett GQ Query, and today I'm joined by Jordan. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I don't even know, we've found each other on social media world probably a couple of years ago.
Probably like 3 or 4 during COVID times for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
That long ago?
Yeah.
I was thinking like 2. Oh man.
No, it was a while.
Okay. Did you find me first?
No, you found me.
Okay.
You found me because you were followed by one of my friends and I was like, who is this? Because I was like, I don't know who this is.
Who is this person?
They were like someone that I used to work with. You coached with her. So yeah.
There we go. Interesting. Learned something new today. So Jordan, walk me through your journey from like personal trainer to naturopathic medicine doctor.
Sure. All of them kind of tied in past my undergrad. So when I was going through my undergrad degree, I was originally going to be a nurse. I took a class in molecular and cellular biology, realized that I really liked the science side and decided that I was going to put a pause on the nursing thing and see what I could do with just science.
Okay. Graduated
with a degree in molecular and cellular biology, and realized that you really don't have another option other than going into healthcare with that degree because it's either research and I did not want to be stuck behind like a microscope. So ended up working in the conventional medicine realm while I was going through school. I was working on a bone marrow transplant oncology unit and just wasn't super impressed by the care that was given in the hospital. So I was planning on taking my MCAT at that time. Ended up pausing that because I was like, this just doesn't feel right. I don't know if this is what I want to do. And ended up meeting a naturopath at that time and found Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine out here in Tempe. Okay. It's actually known as Sonoran University of Health Sciences now. And took a tour, kind of fell in love with the staples of what it meant to be a naturopath. And that timing kind of coincided at the same time with me getting really into fitness. So I was going through med school as I was becoming a trainer at F45. So I used my experience in the gym as time went on to kind of like work with people, get to know what people want to see as far as like health and wellness goes. And then ended up kind of just taking it into the natural medicine realm as well. So there wasn't really a straight line from one to the other. They both went together.
Yeah. I don't think there ever is a straight line in life.
No. And it was more just I needed like something to clear my head while I was going through med school because you're so kind of ingrained in school 24/7. I just needed something to kind of have on the side.
Break it up, yeah.
I was also training for marathons at the time. So it was a busy time of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The things that we do in our early 20s, like...
Oh my God. I'm pretty sure that's what got me into the position that I am now was the just massive stress that was on my body for like 5-6 years. Because I was waking up at 4 to go coach. I would run like 18 miles on the weekend, all while going through med school. So it was like, you probably needed a break at some point, Jordan. And then the world just forced you to have a break.
Yeah. That's if you really look at a lot of stories, right? Like even my story, it's a very common theme. And everybody's physiology reacts different.
Right.
Like something that I've really pointed out recently or came to some conclusions about is like everybody has a different level of resilience, and everybody's like physiology almost quote unquote breaks in different ways.
Right.
Right. So it's commonalities though.
Absolutely. I see it all the time with my patients, in particular women. You work with women a lot. Just keep going until like they can't go anymore. And we all hit this wall. Sometimes it's worse for one than another, but we're not all getting cancer, but people will just like be bedbound for like months at a time. And it's like, I wish there was a check engine sign for females, because it needs to turn on quicker than it does. We never really know when to pause.
But there is check engine signs.
We
it's just everybody
listen.
Exactly. Everybody chalks it up to, because the problem is like it's become such a theme in our society and culture, is it's become so common. Right. So like these women, they ask their girlfriends and they're like, oh yeah, I deal with that. Or, oh yeah, I haven't gone to the bathroom in a week. Like that's, and their girlfriend will be like, oh, that's normal.
Right.
But it's not normal. It's common. It's just not normal at all.
Absolutely.
And that is like your body screaming at you.
Yep. Same thing with people that have like terrible menstrual cycles. We're all taught to believe that you're just supposed to be miserable for 2 weeks out of the month. Ladies, that is not how you're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. We all just kind of thought this was how we were supposed to be feeling, and it's absolutely not. You're supposed to feel as good as you can.
100%. Was there any like big, like in that story, any big pivotal moments like that transitioned you from, hey, like you're in school, right? Like you said, you graduated with a degree in molecular biology. And like for some people that may not know, it's such a funny story, like how I know this, but like I know like research, like you really don't make a whole lot of money and you work obscene amounts of hours.
The end goal is to get your PhD at that point. I had no interest in doing that.
Yeah.
I think the biggest like pivotal moment as far as me not wanting to go in conventional medicine was my own health journey. I've been dealing with my health since I was like 17. I got diagnosed with high blood pressure, and like really high, was in and out of the ER. They had to call a stroke unit every single time I went in because my blood pressure was just that high. And same thing, I was eating healthy. I was running marathons. I was in college at that time, so I'm sure my diet wasn't as clean as it should have been, but there was no reason why my blood pressure should have been that elevated. And I went through like 4 different medications, 2 of which ended me in the ER. And it was just like not between my own journey and what I saw working in the hospitals. I just was like, this is not what I want to do. And so there wasn't really any big pivotal moment that made that decision for me. It was just like my own experience lined up with what I saw in the patient care realm of it was just not where I wanted to be. Because patients so frequently in the hospitals were asking questions that docs would just like ignore, brush them off. They were like, you don't need to know this. My aunt was actually diagnosed with leukemia when I was working at the oncology unit.
Okay.
Same thing. It was just constantly asking questions, getting no answers. You would get a call light, the nurse would kind of brush you off. And I just did not want to be another like cog in that wheel. Like people deserve more than, 2 seconds of your time. People deserve answers to their questions. And that's kind of what I set out to do.
Knowing what you know now, high blood pressure in women, especially a 17-year-old woman, it's not even common. Like that's at all. Knowing what you know now, was it for you driven by genetics?
I'll be honest, we still have no idea. I have a little bit of a stenotic renal artery, meaning that it's smaller than it should be.
Okay.
Your kidneys have a lot to do with regulating your blood pressure. So some docs have attributed it to that. It does run in my family, not to the level that I have it. But yeah, we really still don't have an answer, to be completely honest. Everything that I've done, again, now I do everything 80% right, and it's still elevated from time to time. So
yeah. And I mean, I know like stress can be a huge impact, like especially for women. If we see that outcome, like stress can be a huge proponent of that. But
I don't know that I ever had stress high enough to drive it.
Yeah.
Like it was like 180 over 120, or at one point I went to the hospital, I was like 200 over 110. Wow. That's when they called the stroke unit.
Right.
Fortunately, nothing terrible has ever happened, but I can't say that I have ever felt stressed enough to where that would be a huge
make
impact.
Sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And stress isn't going to drive it that high either.
No.
I mean, unless it's been like 40 years of that type of stress. At 17, I can't say I had been through all that much.
No. Interesting. Cancer.
Yep.
How old?
29.
Wow.
29. Am I lying? I might have been 28. No, 29. I'm 30 now. I was diagnosed October of 2023. Yeah.
What's that? I mean, is that at that point, like the lowest point up until this point? Is that?
You know, I didn't have time to process what I was going through at that moment. In that same month, my grandfather, who had dementia, was also passing away. So I can't really tell you what it felt like getting that diagnosis, because I think my body just went into freeze.
Yeah.
Like normally I'm like a fight, but I literally just froze. Yep. And I don't think I actually began to process everything until my hair started falling out, which was late last year. So like probably July of last year is when I think everything slowed down enough for me to be able to recognize what was actually going on. But yeah, obviously that was a very pivotal moment in my life. I think it was necessary though. Like I said, I have been go probably for 29 years at this point.
Right.
And it forced me to slow down. And I'll be honest, for the first year, I didn't slow down. Like nothing in my life changed. I was still in the gym every day at 5 a.m. I was still working. I was still learning, still taking on everything I could. And then probably within the last 3 or 4 months, my body has been exhausted. Like everything that happened in the past year caught up to me. Like I can't get out of bed super early anymore. Workouts have to be super slow. Like my brain fog is out of control. Thank you to all my patients who still trust me, because my words fumble 24/7.
Yeah.
So, I'm learning as I go. It's been a learning process for sure. My mindset has really been the only saving grace, because I think it's very easy for people to turn negative and like, oh, poor me, all of this when you're going through something like this. But I told myself pretty early on I was not going to do that. So yeah, I've tried to keep pushing as much as I can, but I am getting my butt handed to me at this point.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
Where in there did you graduate?
I graduated. So the escalation was I graduated in 2021. I moved out to 2020? No, I was a COVID graduate. So 2020.
Okay.
Graduated 2020. I moved out to Washington for residency. All of this started getting caught over there because I had gone to the hospital. I got shingles out in Washington. That's how stressful that was. Mm-hmm. Ended up going to the hospital, and that's where my blood count started being kind of wonky. So I probably had leukemia when I was living out there in 2021, and we didn't really catch it until 2023 after repeat blood work and everything. So yeah, it was graduation, residency. I was working for 2 years and then got diagnosed.
Okay. I thought you were like just graduating within the diagnosis. No.
Thank God.
Right.
There was some wiggle room between there.
Mm-hmm.
I was working actually at a practice out in Goodyear when I was diagnosed, and everyone that I've worked with has been very helpful along the journey as well. So yeah, thank God it was not that close. That would have been terrible. I guess I had leukemia when I graduated, if I think about it.
I think that's a really important, like we talked a little bit about my journey, and I think it's an important thing to state that maybe we haven't brought up on this show yet is the importance of regular blood work.
Oh yeah. 100%.
And the thing is like you need to advocate for your health. So like that's
how I caught this.
I had a blood draw on like Tuesday of this week. And like I posted on my socials, it's like, oh, do you get regular lab work done? And I was very surprised to see that like 80% of the following that answered was like, yes. Or like, actually, I think it was like in the 90%. But the thing is like, I then sent a question to them because the question was very vague. And I was like, in-depth labs, ? And I think that most people, because like I grew up in the Midwest and the way I was raised, you get a CMP, a CBC, TSH, you might get glucose, A1C, and insulin. Yep. Like, and that's it.
Lipid panel. They'll throw that in there.
Lipid panel. Yeah. But not even most Western medicines, they won't even run ApoB and like lipoprotein little a. They they won't run any of the advanced like lipid panels that, have come out.
They don't necessarily believe in them.
Yeah.
I work with a cardiologist who does, thank goodness. The majority of my patients will go through an NMR profile, which does break it down into the particle size. Mm-hmm. If we have any cardiovascular illness in the family, I'll toss in an oxidized LDL and apoprotein B. But I think as this new generation of docs is coming in, they're more open to the stuff that we're doing. So I think there's going to be a shift here pretty soon in medicine once that older generation of doctors kind of stops practicing.
It has to, because now the statistics, like one of my mentors, like the first week of January he gave us like the current statistics on like functional med. Mm-hmm. Majority of like functional med and naturopathic medicine practices, they are booked out 4 months in advance and have zero openings. They are so overrun. Mm-hmm. They cannot keep up. Like the functional medicine side of the industry is it's like the statistics by like 2030, it's like going to 10x.
Right.
And Western medicine is going to get left in the dust if they don't figure out like, hey, this ain't it. We need to figure out how to like treat root causes. Yeah.
I think our generation of people is really just focused on, getting better and doing better than, our not ancestors, the generations prior to us. Because sticking a medication on something to like make it go away often creates other problems. Mm-hmm. We end up having these older patients who have that polypharmacy situation where one medication is causing one thing and then they're put on another medication to address that. And they're on like 15 meds and it's just kind of a nightmare. So I think people are really starting to focus in on actually fixing their bodies, which is great for us. But like you said, the demand for us is very high. However, insurance doesn't cover us. We need it to make enough as providers to be able to cover overhead and everything. Right. So we have to charge a little bit more than, so not everyone has access, which makes it very, very difficult.
A colleague of mine recently mentioned that they're getting a lot more applications where people are pursuing like functional health coaching, or in your case, naturopathic medicine preventatively. Like something hasn't even broken. And like, have you noticed that shift personally? Like I have as well, but it was like, as she said it, I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's right. Like people are coming to me before things are broken to make sure things don't break. Yeah,
I am seeing a lot of that. Unfortunately, a lot of the patient base that we do end up seeing are people that are kind of like on their last ditch effort. because they've been tossed from doctor to doctor to doctor, and they're like, I don't really have any other hope. Like, let's see what you can do. So I would say the majority of my patient base is in that situation. I would say about 10-15% of them are people that are just interested in making sure that they can have longevity in the future and making sure that they're set up for a good, healthy future. So hopefully that shifts. I would love to not be a last resort for people because they come in real cranky and they're like, you better fix me. I'm like, I'll do my best. Can't make a miracle happen overnight, but I promise I will give you my all.
All I can think of is like some of the memes that have gone around the last couple of years of like the stick figure of like, you better fucking fix me.
Pretty much. That's, I understand the frustrations when people get to our doorstep 100%. In that capacity. Yeah. I would like people to understand that we are not like, I'm not a miracle worker. It took you 10 years to get to this point. It's going to take me some time to reverse what's going on.
Exactly. Grandpa is on the way out.
Grandpa has passed.
Right.
Yep.
But during like when you got diagnosed?
Literally, my mother was visiting him in the hospital the day that I got my diagnosis, had to call my family while they were pretty much making the decisions to take my grandpa home and let him pass. He passed within the next 2 weeks.
What's going through your mind at that point?
I really think nothing, to be completely honest. So the way it works is you get your blood work done. They send you for genetic testing. Once you have confirmed genetic testing that you have the mutation for leukemia, bone marrow biopsy. So I got diagnosed. Grandpa got sent home. I had to do bone marrow biopsy on my mom's birthday. Sorry, Mom.
Which is like extremely painful.
It wasn't.
No?
No.
Okay.
They hype it up. I think, or I don't know if I have a high pain tolerance or what, but I didn't feel anything. The most painful part was actually the like numbing injection. But yeah, then he ended up passing shortly after my bone marrow biopsy. So I literally think my body was just like protecting me because I cried, of course. I remember being with my mentor actually that day. And then after that, it was kind of like, all right, let's lace up our shoes and get on the way because we have some things to fix. So went to the funeral. And again, I probably didn't process any of that for 3 or 4 months afterwards. I was just kind of like wrapping my head around what was going on. And I did what you should not do in any of these situations and stopped going to therapy, stopped going to church, really just stopped everything that was keeping me sane.
Yep.
And then it all compounded one night while I was just laying there. I started crying for like 2 hours and went back to everything and did end up processing it all just a little bit later than everyone else.
I think that's a super important thing to focus on is like we are now more connected than ever before and yet extremely disconnected. Like it's so easy to stop showing up, to stop going to therapy, to stop going to church, stop investing in community.
Yep. 100%.
And before you know it, you're alone.
And the cancer journey itself is pretty lonely because no one knows what you're going through.
No.
Like even someone else that has cancer, like I went to a cancer survivors gala in December and they said something that really stuck with me. Like, you're never going to feel completely whole again. And that's just because like you're always going to have this feeling of what if. And it really is true. Like when you're going through it, you don't want to be a burden to people. So you stop talking about it and you internalize it and you don't want to like make other people worry. So you don't talk about it anymore. And for me, my cancer journey hasn't been as hard as someone who has breast cancer or colon cancer or something like that. So I think I minimize it for myself.
Yeah.
And you do end up kind of just putting yourself on this island. And, you know, my goal with all of this now is to help people not feel that way. And I would like to, that's kind of been my whole goal all along since diagnosis, was to kind of be there as a support system for people who need it, because I have an amazing support system. there are people who do not. And I can't imagine going through this without the people that I have in my life. So
I think as like go-getters, it's just kind of in our nature. Like we're like, nah, I'm fine. Like worry, like your problems are bigger than mine. Like it's not that big of a deal. A colleague of mine locally, when I was at like one of my lowest points, like with my hypothyroidism before being treated. And then, man, I don't think I saw him for like 18 months. And we got together and had like lunch a while back. And he just looks at me and he goes, I had no idea things were that bad. Like, why didn't you say anything? And kind of just like I resonate with that so much because it's like same. It's like, I don't want to be a burden. Like, what are you going to do?
And you end up consoling people. Like that was one of the strangest things I think that I kind of recognized was when you tell people you have cancer, you end up in the position telling them it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And it was so funny to me because I was like, I want someone to give me a hug and like tell me it's going to be okay. And again, people did start shifting once they kind of like, you can't just drop a bomb on people that you have cancer and expect them to like be normal. Yeah. But once people did get used to it, of course, people started checking in and like making sure I was okay. But that was something that was so funny to me is like you ended up being the one that had to make people feel comfortable with your diagnosis.
4 months later, you cry for 2 hours, you're processing grandpa, but you said earlier it was, if my math is right, like almost 10 months later, as your hair is falling out, like the cancer stuff.
I think I was ignoring the fact that I had cancer, to be completely honest. I wouldn't even say the word. But yeah, I processed my grandfather, was heartbroken. My family is very close to me. My grandpa was one of my favorite people. So when I actually like began to feel that was very hard. I did end up back at my therapist's doorstep, thank God. So he helped me work through that. And I was talking to him because I was like, I honestly don't know if I'm handling the fact that I have cancer really well or if I'm just ignoring the fact that I have cancer. Yeah. And he was like, the fact that you have the wherewithal to have that question is good. He was like, it's possible that you are not processing it. But he was like, I also don't want to force you to get there because it's going to be hard when you get to that point. And I started losing my hair probably, I want to say July of last year. And it happened overnight. Like just anyone who was watching the journey, like I had a hairline that was here and probably in a matter of a month that had gone back to here. And I was trying so hard to cover it. And I looked in the mirror one day and I was like, you look like that character from Lord of the Rings. Like you need to let it go, girl.
Like just let it go.
And I probably knew for about a month that I wanted to shave my head, but I was not doing it because of the comfort level of people around me. I didn't want, like people kept saying, it'll grow back, just hang in there. And my mom in particular was like, no, you don't have to shave your head yet. And my aunt, the same thing. And I think everyone was doing it to make me feel better. Yeah. And in that instant, I was like, well, they obviously don't want me to shave my head. So I'm just going to keep holding on to it. And then one night I was sitting at Postino's with my best friend. And I looked at her and I was like, yep, it's time.
It's time.
So we went to my other friend's house, shaved my head. And that night was probably the first time I cried about having cancer. Other than the day I got diagnosed. But I think that was more of a fear cry. It wasn't like I am finally accepting this. That was like oh God, what am I going to do if this is bad? So yeah, that was probably the first night that I actually like bawled my eyes out about this situation because I looked like a thumb and I was like, well, this is your new normal. Like I didn't even have a wig. Yeah. Like I had a wig that I didn't like. And I was like, well, you made a little bit of a manic decision here. What are you going to do tomorrow? So it was.
So did you wear the wig?
I wore the wig at first. So I was still going into work. I was still seeing patients. I didn't want to jump scare people and just like walk in bald. So I wore the wig, and then I told people that I shaved my head, and I ended up taking it off by the end of the first day. I hate wigs.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm just embracing being bald.
Okay. Yeah. Cause like there was, as I was like doing some research, like there was I don't know particularly when, but like you were like, oh, like here's how I can wear my wig and people won't notice that it's a wig, and you like put a ball cap on. And
yeah, I do wear them. There's some days where I wake up and I just like don't want to deal with like the obvious looks. You get looks as a bald girl. Yeah. That's just part of it. So like I will put one on those days. And there's some days where I just wake up pissed off that I'm bald. And like, I'm like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this today. I'm not going to look in the mirror with a bald head 12 times today. So I put them on when I'm having those days. And if I'm going to like a nice dinner or something, I'll toss on some hair. But for me, I had to make the decision whether my patients were going to know me as bald or with hair. And because I didn't want to like come in as a different person randomly some days. And I was like, all right, well, we're just going to stick with this because there's no way I'm putting a wig on every single day. They're so itchy. They're uncomfy. I feel like a fraud. Like, hate it.
Makes sense. I have, like I said earlier, have had the opportunity to read like 1,500 lab panels in like 12 months. And
that is an opportunity.
It is an opportunity. And the funny thing is like, I've been on TRT since I was 29 years old.
Okay.
And I have obnoxious genetics when it comes to hair.
Okay.
And what's really funny is since I've treated my thyroid, I actually lose hair like wildfire.
That's weird.
Since treating my thyroid.
That's
so
wild.
Yeah, all right, naturopath. Let's figure that one out.
That's funky.
Because I'm still at a loss on that one.
Thyroid will always throw me for a loop.
Like I shed so bad, but the funny thing is my genetics, as you can see, I still have a beautiful thick head of hair.
My family has beautiful hair.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, I remember your pictures and
beautiful. My mom's hair is like thick and gorgeous. My dad has a full head. Not right now. My dad shaved his head with me.
Yes, Dad.
But he had beautiful hair. But I've had alopecia since I was probably the same time as my blood pressure. I had the little round patches kind of all over my head. So that's what we thought this was. I thought that my body was just having another alopecia flare. And then it started doing the hair receding. And I was like, this is not.
You're like, okay.
This is not alopecia.
The funny thing is like I'll sit there and it's like for dudes, like they'll come and they'll be like, well, like what can you guys do about like my hair loss? And oral finasteride is a common therapy, but for those people that don't know, like oral finasteride is like basically chemical castration. And it's not, for some people's physiology, it can be real bad, real fast. And I'm like, it's not worth it, dude. Like, don't do it. Like, just ship it. Go bald. And I understand the irony, like looking at my head. I'm like, yeah, just go bald, dude. I'm like,
I don't have to worry about that, but you do it.
I'm like, I always make the joke. I'm like, well, at least we know like you have high levels of DHT, which is 7 times more anabolic than testosterone. So like, dude, you can get really jacked.
You know, that's actually what I thought was happening when I started losing my hair. So I have PCOS.
Yeah. Androgen driven.
I wasn't sure because I had an IUD that was progesterone.
Okay.
And I had never done like a Dutch test or anything of my actual hormones to see how my testosterone was breaking down.
Yep.
Was slightly elevated. Don't know if it was breaking down towards DHT or not. But as soon as I pulled the IUD, that's what triggered the hair loss. So I was like, I think my progesterone was protecting my testosterone because progesterone can like off balance your DHT. And if you pull it out. So I think that's what stimulated the hair loss. And then just the mix of the alopecia with the cancer treatment I just created the perfect storm.
The perfect storm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because I was not supposed to lose hair. the treatment that I'm on does not cause hair loss. So now I'm just bald. I know. I make the same look every day.
Okay. So yeah, you alopecia such a young age. Like, what was that like, dealing with that, like, emotionally at such a young age? Like, on one hand,
I had so much hair. Like, I don't know if you remember, but I had a lot of hair. You did,
yeah.
So I never had a huge problem covering the spots. The worst, I guess, flare I ever had, I had lost the entire like right side, and I was still able to cover it with all of my hair. So it never made a huge impact. I did have a couple times where I had lost hair up here.
Okay.
That was like a little bit difficult to deal with. But I never was put in a situation where people even knew what was going on. Like, unless you were close to me, you didn't know that I had bald spots all over my head.
So what, forgive me, I didn't look into it. What is alopecia?
It is an autoimmune condition where your body attacks your hair follicles.
Okay.
So it basically stunts your hair follicle growth. And that's what has happened here. Like, if you touch my head, it's like a baby's bottom. Like, there's no follicle at all. I have one spot in the back of my head that does still grow. But yeah, there's no follicle anywhere. I've lost my eyebrows. My eyelashes are gone. So yeah.
Interesting.
It's been an experience. I've saved a lot of money.
Saved a lot of money. What do you?
I literally, I don't grow hair anymore. So you don't have to wax. You don't have to do anything. I don't have to shave my armpits. Like, nothing at all.
Silver lining.
I made someone speechless. Shocker.
Silver lining. Okay. I was like, what?
Listen, so alopecia areata can always turn into alopecia totalis. So the areata is where I had those like little patches. Totalis is where you just shed all of your follicles everywhere. So
interesting.
It's wild. It's been, but on the same side has brought me a very big community of other bald girls that are going through the same thing. And I never realized how many people were affected by alopecia. So it's had its ups. It's mostly negatives, but there's some positive side. I get to help other people going through the same thing. So
interesting. That's okay. Very cool. The silver lining. I've saved a lot of money.
You have to find a positive in every negative.
What has been some of your deepest fears, like, during treatment?
I mean, obviously you have the fear of dying. Right. For me, not so much like it's possible to die from CML. It doesn't, at this point, it's not a life sentence. If I got diagnosed in like 2011, people had like a 5 or 6 year lifespan after that. But I get my blood checked every 2-3 months, and every single time I'm a wreck for like 2 or 3 weeks, because there is the chance for you to turn into a more accelerated form of leukemia. So I think the biggest fear would be that I transition over to that accelerated form. Or recently I found a bump on my hip bone and I went through the whole rabbit hole again. And that was another thing that they said at the Cancer Survivors Gala. Your brain will always go to cancer first now. Yeah. Because that's an experience that you've had. So I was like, did I just develop bone cancer overnight? So we had to go through, get an MRI. We were going to biopsy if the MRI came back wonky. It didn't, thank God. But yeah, that's always in the back of your head. So I would say the biggest fear is obviously that. I'm also scared of the impact that it has on the people around me. Because I have to imagine that it's had a pretty big impact on my parents. I can't imagine watching your child have to go through this. And my dad in particular is I've prayed multiple times for it to come to me. I'd rather be going through this rather than you. And I don't want it to have a lasting impact on the people in my life because I'm handling it fine. And like at the end of the day, I'm thankful it happened to me. I'm happy it didn't happen to someone else. Like I'm strong enough to handle this. I have the support system to handle this. Like, but yeah, those are my two biggest fears. The impact that it's had on my family and friends, obviously. And, you know, there is that lingering what if?
Mm-hmm.
What if something bad happens?
Yeah. Isn't that funny how that works? Like, how we're like, oh yeah, like we got this. Like,
oh God. And people are like, you handle it so well and you're so positive all the time. And, you know, I think I've done that to myself because I show up on social media positive all the time. But like, there's days when I call my mom bawling my eyes out, just like angry. And I'm like, why am I in this situation? And like, I've sat with God and I'm like, there was 1,000 other people you could have done this to who probably deserved it. Like, so I do have my bad days and I think I need to be better about showing those bad days. But like, that's a very intimate part to share with strangers. And I don't know everyone on my social media at this point. So I am trying to get better at opening up about the bad days.
It's important to share those bad days because it's like, it makes it relatable and it makes it an opportunity to actually like truly connect with people.
Right.
Because like, even what I've dealt with, right? Like it's all relative, right? I have not dealt with cancer, but you know, we were talking about thyroid and your current practice and what you're doing, you're dealing far more with thyroid and sex hormones and a lot of the things that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And my unique situation, right? Like using medication at this time to treat my thyroid is, you know, I go through situations where it's like, there's some days where I forget my second dose. And some days I make it through the entire day and it's like 7 p.m. at night. And I was like, oh, I forgot my dose, but like I feel fine. Like I feel good. And then there's days that it hits me like a brick wall. And like you said, that anger comes out and I'm just angry because I'm just like, all I want to do is keep focusing and working on the things that I want to work on. And it just, it cripples you.
Yeah. I think that has been the biggest eye opener to me is like, I need to be able to give my body a break.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that I did this to myself. But I think that God gave me a lot of warning signs before getting to this point. He was like, you need to slow down. You need to slow down. You need to slow down. And he was like, damn it, Jordan, I'm going to make you slow down then. Like, if you're not going to listen, here you go. And, you know, I am grateful now. I spend so much time just like with myself, learning more about God, spending time just with me and my dog. And it has actually been a very good past year.
Yeah. Yeah. We can learn a lot when we slow down.
I know. It's wild.
It's such an interesting concept.
And we preach about it all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Slow down.
But I'm not gonna.
Nope. How has faith supported you during, you know, these most challenging moments?
Sure. So I'll be honest. I was always probably like a lukewarm Christian.
Yep.
But up until the last year, I knew God. I would show up on random Sundays when I was sad. I would pray when things were going wrong. I never thanked God for anything. And, you know, there's something about being put in a position that there's no other way out. Like, I couldn't do anything. And I said that in my last post on Instagram. Like, I hit a moment where I was so overwhelmed that I was like, God, just take this. Like, this is for you to handle. I'm gonna keep my hands off of it because I can't do anything. Like, you, my oncologist, you guys do your work because I couldn't focus on it. And I do think that kind of is what has kept me so positive is like, I know that this isn't in my hands. This is completely up to whether God wants it to heal or continue healing, or whether God wants to continue to use me to share my journey and help other people. So I've really just handed it over to him, and it's helped me to actually dive deeper into my Bible. I show up at church every Sunday. I have surrounded myself with people who are also in the Word and also know God, because you need people to lean on that also have the same faith that you have. Mm-hmm. Because same thing as people that don't have cancer, people that don't know God don't know. They don't know how to support you when you're going through something like this. So that's genuinely the only thing that's gotten me through is my relationship with God. And I don't want to say that that's the reason this happened. But again, God gave me 1 million signs that I needed to get closer to him. And you get that big red flashing light and you're like, all right, okay.
Got it.
Here I am.
Noted. In what ways would you say that your spiritual beliefs have helped you navigate this health crisis? Obviously, like you said, lukewarm.
Sure.
But as that red flag came up and you were just brought to your knees, no other choice.
Kind of the same thing. It just really was, it was a moment where I had nothing else to depend on. And like I alluded to earlier, you're alone. No matter how much you talk to someone about this journey, no matter how much you speak on having cancer, you're by yourself. And the only person that is able, or only being that is able to be there with you in those moments where you just feel so low and so lonely is God. And it really was a testament to me about how much I needed to be able to lean on him. And, I'm not happy this happened, but I am so grateful that really has been the only thing that has pushed me to actually strengthen my relationship with Jesus. And, at the end of the day, everything happens for a reason. Do I think that was the only reason I got cancer? No, I think that this is part of the reason. I think that I get to talk to people. I get to be motivational for other people going through this. But it really, really drove me to, it drove me to my knees, basically. I had to reach my lowest point to be able to get to the point I am with God.
Yeah. I think too is, what are your thoughts? Because it's for you now, you're bald.
Yeah.
Right. So it's obvious, hey, something's different.
Right.
But I think one of the hardest things, circling all the way back to what I told you, is I met for lunch with a friend, mm-hmm. and he's like, I had no idea. Why didn't you say something? And it's like you said, you're alone. It's what do you say? What do you say? What do you say to someone? You're like, hey, every single day, at 4 a.m., because at the time I was still coaching in person, every single day at 4 a.m., I peel myself out of bed and I experience extreme rage. Mm-hmm. For the first hour, don't look at me. Don't talk to me. I will rip your face off. Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to be awake. I'm angry because I have zero energy. I'm smashing 500 milligrams of caffeine.
Yep. Before the sun even rises.
And in 1 hour's time, I have to shove breakfast down my face, and I have to be a bright, shining light to mm-hmm. the next 30 people over the next 5 hours.
I don't think there's enough given to people who are in our positions, and in particular trainers. Having to show up positively for people every single day when you're feeling crappy yourself is exhausting. It's exhausting. People don't realize the impact that it has on you internally. And I've had to set that boundary with people where I'm it is hard to get through the day with a smile. I don't want to go sit at dinner and have to fake smile, fake conversation. I just want to be at home by myself. So I think that's something that is worth stating. Like people that have to be positive all the time, even when they feel like garbage, deserve an award, deserve a round of applause, because like we all show up every day, even if we don't want to.
Are you naturally like introverted or extroverted?
If you talked to me before this, I would say extroverted. Now I would say an introverted extrovert. If I'm around people, I will absolutely talk your ear off, smile, do all the things. But my social battery runs out very fast. So I go home and like hermit really hard.
During those moments of hermit, does the loneliness like creep in?
No. I never feel lonelier than when I'm out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have struggled with this because if I have a wig on, that feeling goes away. Like, but if I am out bald in public, I feel so alone. I feel so just like vulnerable.
Yeah.
If I'm with like my friends or like my family or something, that's one thing. But like, for instance, I went to Boondocks the other weekend and I didn't have hair on and I wasn't planning on going there. So it's kind of a surprise to me. I ended up leaving because I just felt like everyone was staring at me. Yeah. So no, I feel my most like whole and not lonely sitting at home because like I can just be myself. I can pull off the eyelashes. I can take the hair off. Like I don't have to worry about who's looking at me or what people are thinking. Interesting.
Okay. What would you say to a woman who's currently struggling with a serious health challenge?
Go right through it. There are lessons to be learned on the other side of this, and you are 100% going to come out stronger. It is terrifying. Find a support group. Find someone that you can actually trust and talk to, because as much as we all want to be strong and take it on ourselves, it took me a year to find people who were going through the same thing to like just have as a community. But you need a community to get through it. But, you know, face it head on, lean on God if you're religious, lean on whatever entity you believe in, but you need to have a support system. You need to believe in yourself, and I promise you there is a positive at the end of that journey, or even going through that journey. I'm not at the end yet, but there has been so much light and positivity brought to me during all this.
Yeah. Now that you're cancer cell free, right? What how has that shifted your understanding of health and healing?
You know, I have not actually really thought about that. You know, I think I've shielded myself from thinking about the cancer too often, to be completely honest. What I can say is, as a naturopath, there is 100% a need for Western and Eastern medicine. I have always felt that way. Yep. The healing process, you know, sometimes you need a little bit of a nudge, and I practice more integratively. If someone needs pharmaceuticals to be safe, absolutely, 100%. When I got diagnosed with cancer, there was no chance I was going to try and handle all of that naturally. So I think, you know, the biggest lesson I've learned is that truthfully, integratively, we can kind of beat whatever at this point. I'm on Sprycel. I've been doing curcumin IVs. I've been doing EGCG IVs. So, you know, the beating it process, I don't know what did what, but the combination of the two has done wonders for me. So it really just kind of further ingrained to me what I already knew, is that we really need to have time and place for both of those.
Absolutely. This is the Intentional Health for Women podcast. So everybody gets the same question.
All right.
How are you living intentionally moving into this next season of your life?
I actually had that as my goal this year, is to just live more intentionally. Because like I said, I was just pushing through. Like I had no intention other than just like hustling. Yep. I was waking up early. I was working till like 10 or 11 at night. And now I wake up, I enjoy my morning coffee. I read my Bible. I set my goals for the day. I set my goals for the week. I have planned out a vision board for the year. So I really, really just plan on, living my life to actually enjoy it. Like, rather than just pushing through, I'm going to enjoy the ups, the downs, and kind of just see where this year takes me, because I have a really good feeling about this year.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's been a pleasure.
Of course.
Where do we find you?
Instagram and TikTok, Jordan.Trapp, 3 Ps, TRAPPP.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If this episode brought you value, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. We are not normal. We are intentional.